Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz, here continuing on with our team and Supercoach discussion series. Today, we've got the GWS with the great and informative GWS member, Grady. How are you, mate?
I'm going well, thank you, Swizz.
Thank you for joining us, mate. We do appreciate you coming on board with your insights, and I'm looking forward to them today. But before we jump into the podcast, as always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular YouTube, Spotify. Get in contact with us via X, Supercoach Insider 100 or Swizz26. Grady, where can the good people out there find you, mate?
I have an X account at Checkmate FC, which I use to keep track of all the Supercoach news. I haven't really posted there in a while, but I'm planning to put some posts up because I've been doing some research into players that have scored 150 or more during the season and seeing which teams those players come from.
Excellent. Well, looking forward to that. But before we jump into that, we'll go into the fixtures. So the first 5 games there, the Giants, unfortunately, are playing in the opening round. So that means they've got the early bye, which this year is in round 2. So they do kick off with the Pies up there at now NG Stadium, or the old Giants Stadium, Sydney Showgrounds, whatever name you want to call it. Then down here in Melbourne with the D's in round 1, have the bye. Then the Hawks down in Tassie, bit of travelling here for the Giants early on. West Coast back in Giant Stadium, and then over to Norwood Oval to play St Kilda. So though there's a couple, definitely some winnable games in that first 5, they will be getting the frequent flyer miles up pretty early there, mate.
100%. Thankfully, the Giants don't mind a good travel. We seem to play all right on the road, so we'll face whatever the AFL's thrown at us with the draw.
Yes, and it probably doesn't get any easier after that, because you've actually got the it'd be interesting to see if the Giants stick around, but they do have the 6-day break in Adelaide, so you expect they'd probably stay there for the week, then come back to Canberra. They're home away from home against they're probably their main rival outside of the Sydney Swans, which is the Western Bulldogs. Go back to the Sydney to play at the SCG against the Swans, down at GMHBA Stadium against the Cats, before finally in round 10 going back to NG Stadium. So, they're going to see plenty of different grounds in those first 10 weeks. But, if they're good enough, they're going to obviously have to turn up at all of them.
Yeah, I'm happy we don't have to play at windy Ballarat this round. So this season will be good for that, because those games are always a nightmare to watch.
I think I might have been up at the last one. It was definitely a couple of years ago when Toby Green went nuts in the second half. So that was great to watch as a viewer, as a neutral supporter. But it is probably not the greatest ground to watch quality footy at. But I do love the fact that it is at a community ground. I just think if they probably built out one of the grandstands to protect that wind a little bit more, and maybe extend, even though they've got the train line that goes past, put a train station there. It's probably the perfect little boutique ground. I think if it held 20,000, it would be perfect for the not only the people of Ballarat, but surrounding suburbs, and even Melbourne people who are heading up there.
Great to get it into the community, and great to get the Giants out into more eyes watching them. It's just that ground always tends to be very, very windy, and so I think the last time we played the Bulldogs, we were players were struggling to kick 50 meters to score goals, whereas on the other side of the ground, they were kicking them for 55, 60 out.
Yeah.
So it was quite extreme.
There's no real patch of fixture that actually stands out to me that goes, oh yeah, that's a really easy part of the year, and it's probably going to be so close anyway. But the double games are interesting. The Weagles, West Coast Eagles, they're in rounds 4 and 17. Should be trying to back themselves to win both of those games if they are any bit serious about making the 8 this year. The Saints, though they're improving, again, a team that they would be backing themselves to win the both. And then you got the Gold Coast Suns, who are improving, but the Giants have had a bit of the wood on them in recent times. They're I guess they're bigger brother when it comes to the newer teams in the competition. So there is 3 games I'd probably pencil in, 3 teams I'd pencil in, thinking that if they can get 6 wins there, it probably does put them in good stead. But like, every game is going to be a challenge. But talking about challenge, playing the Bulldogs, as I said, that rival team, the Swans, who is obviously their local rival, and then Geelong, who they've had some good battles with over the past few years. that's where their work's going to be really cut out for them. So I feel like if they can kind of split those games and then win the other 6 and end up 9-3 out of that would put them in a good stead to try to make the finals. But if they'll start to drop some of those games, which as I said, not going to be easy. That's where I guess the expectations of probably making and trying to go a step further than where they have been might fall a bit flat.
Yes, I remember the seasons during Leon Cameron. We'd seem to beat the grand finalists of whatever the year was, but at the same time, we'd drop the games against the Wooden Spooner, and it was so aggravating. So whenever we travel over to Optus Stadium to take on West Coast, I've always got my fingers crossed because they're the kinds of games that we drop. But no, I'm excited. Like, there's some good matchups there. I think Geelong's, we always play Sydney twice, but I'm happy to play Geelong twice because we match up decently well against the Cats, and we don't mind playing at their home ground either. And 2 opportunities to beat the Bulldogs, we'll take that every single time.
I like that. From a fan's point of view, what is your expectations for the Giants this year? Because obviously they've been in the mix and so close in recent years. It's always hard to continue to back up. But what would you be thinking?
I don't know. I was so confident last year. We just felt like after losing the prelim to Collingwood the year before that, it set the fire in the players' belly, and we were ripe and ready. We knew what we needed to get it, had to do to get it done, and then felt like we lost the grand final twice, and we didn't even play there. I get confused because I think we played a prelim final. No, that wasn't us. That was Brisbane and Geelong, but it felt like we were that close. That how are the players going to react after 2 big losses like that? I don't know. One thing I am encouraged by is Adam Kingsley, because he's got a really good head on his shoulders, and he'll get the players back into the mindset of, okay, we've suffered 2 big defeats, but we know what we need to do to get the job done. So again, they will have the expectation that come the final week in September, they'll be playing there. So as a supporter, I guess I'm a little bit biased in going, I expect to be playing finals. But again, the boys need to get it done. We didn't start off last year in great fashion. So hopefully Adam Kingsley will be reviewing the tapes and going, okay, why are we fading out of the game so quickly, giving up big leads? And if they've addressed that in the off season, which I'm confident they can, it really is anything's possible, anywhere from top 4 to, if we just don't have our heads on right, we can drop out of the 8. So we've got to be careful.
I have seen this in some ladder predictions that people put up that have Giants in that sort of even bottom 6 range. And they're talking about losing Cumming and losing James Peatling. Some of those players who were just in the best 23, but maybe not the game changers of some of the others. But just some losses there. But I think people it's amazing how much 3 months flies in our mind. Because as you said, Sydney were the most dominant team throughout the home and away season, and for 3 3/4, absolutely dominated them. And it wasn't for the last sort of 10 minutes where they came home and got that. And then again, Brisbane, I've had people sit there even on this podcast and just random chats and Brisbane, they were the clear best team last year. Well, again, GWS dominated them for pretty well 3 3/4 and just couldn't get over the line. So you match it up with the best. You were so close, and even the previous year, as we know, again, it was so close. But the thought here is how close can you just keep running before it takes its toll. But in saying that, maybe it also continues to drive the players, and they go, well, we can match it with the best, and it's just probably takes another. A little bit of composure from us, but the ball bouncing the right way a couple of times, and all of a sudden, we're playing in a grand final again.
Yep, I remember both those games so vividly, and it was bad enough doing it against Sydney, and then I don't know if it was the 3rd quarter or the 4th quarter, but Lockie Keefe missed a set shot, and he had done that the game before against the Swans, and we're 60 points or so up at that point. I just thought, we're not going to do this again, are we? Just having to watch that final quarter where they, in fairness, knew that they had nothing to play. Like next week wasn't going to be there if they didn't win, so they threw everything at us, and credit to them for being able to get there. So I'm still bullishly optimistic. As I said, Adam Kingsley, he'll get the boys in good shape, and we've seen the way that he's able to tweak our team. So the year before we were very slow starting, and this year we've been or last season we were very, very quick out of the blocks. So now that he's seen another problem, he'll be addressing it with the coaches and going, what can we do to fix the problem? So I have a lot of faith in him.
Yeah, for sure. You got to back in those coaches to get the best out of
Yep.
them, and the squad is obviously very good. And I'll go through that now. So, I've there always things that can change, injuries and everything, and you never get your best 23 all in together. But the way I see it, if everyone's fit and firing, it's going to be Buckley, Sam Taylor, who's just a superstar, Iden, Ash, Himmelberg, and Whitfield, who again had a pretty well career year last year. I know some people picked him up in Supercoach, and his second half of the year was unreal. Finn Callahan, Jelly, and hopefully his body actually stays fit for once. O'Halloran, Brett Daniels, talking about career years, was brilliant. Anybody who got him in Supercoach was well rewarded. Young Cadman, Toby Green, Jones, Hogan, Riccardi, and then Briggs, who probably did have a down year compared to the year before, but there apparently was some personal issues about that. So hopefully he bounces back. Canelio and young Tom Green. Well, it's probably actually, I shouldn't refer to him young because he's starting to probably hit that about 100 game mark now. I've got Lee Kalia, Cal Ward, Toby Bedford, and the new inclusion in Jake Stringer. So that's a real X factor. Connor Stone is my sub. There's a few players there, probably like most teams, hard done by, who could very easily, been added to this team. But it's always hard to squeeze everybody in. But what are kind of your initial thoughts looking at that?
There's not too many changes that I'd make. I think Harvey Thomas probably still edges out at least Connor Stone at this stage because he played, I think, 22 games for us last year. So he was someone that Adam Kingsley really wants to get a run on the ground. So that I think we've got to find a spot for him. The other one that I've been contemplating, and I don't entirely know how we do it, is, and this might be a little bit controversial, I'm not sure if Jake Riccardi gets a spot in round 0. He got dropped around round 20, and as a team, we looked better with a Hogan, Cadman, 2 tall forward line. With then having them surrounded by the smaller brigade.
Does that include like a Brown, for example, or you
he
think
is the one
doesn't?
that I think could take the spot. I really like his game, and he plays sort of as a mid, so he's kind of not getting in the way as much of Hogan and Cadman as Riccardi sometimes finds. Yeah, he struggles to find fits into the forward line, whereas Brown goes, I'm playing the third, so I will adjust my game accordingly. So yeah, I'm very interested to see what Adam Kingsley does in that regard. But yeah, I think we're going to try to blood some games into Lee Kalia because he was good for us last season. And he's just only going to get better the more games he can play. But as you pointed out, unfortunately, the Giants have suffered from injuries pretty much every season that we've had. So there's definitely going to be plenty of opportunities for players to come in, and if they are playing well, they'll cement their spot and it'll be theirs for them to take. So it changes so quickly.
Yeah, and that's why I think it was probably maybe I've gone with Stone, just kind of match up dependent there. But you're right.
Mm-hmm.
You got Thomas, you got Weir, Toby McMullen played
Yep.
13 games last year, so there's plenty of players that did get opportunities.
Correct.
So yeah, there's always people that have big preseasons and put their hand up, and that especially those intra club and that preseason fixture is going to be very important for these fringe players. Because they've got there's opportunities to be had, and it's just about which players want to actually put their hand up and take them.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so and from that it comes in sort of our super coach targets. So again, not necessarily starting some of these. Some of these can
Hmm.
also be sort of draft players that we're looking at. But yeah, I thought these were the most obvious, but there'll be a couple others that we can talk about. So we'll start off with the obvious one there, which is Lockie Whitfield. Fantastic for those who backed him in last season. Has always probably been frustrating, especially the year before, struggling sort of injuries, but came out and
Hmm.
not only played 23 games last year, but averaged 111. Absolute super year for Lockie, which I think just because he has been a burn man for a lot of people, they just just couldn't bring
Hmm.
themselves to go there. And I must admit, I was in that sort of grouping as well. But if I kind of have a look at those stats from after the bye, which is the important area, because before the bye, we still had that 54, that 69 against Geelong.
Hmm.
But then from that moment, 108, 134, 105, 117, 107, 113, 137, 133, 152, the low score of 97, which was Brisbane away. No, not losing any respect there. 106, and then a final round of 153. Like, that is just an absolute ridiculous second half of footy.
Yeah.
And now the question mark is, can we actually pay that much for him, for a player that we know has the ability to back that up, but also
Hmm.
can throw up the low scores as well?
Correct. And you're gambling against injury with Lockie Whitfield because if he can stay fit and healthy, he, as you pointed out with his scores, he's a gun. He's going to be one of the most consistent defenders that you can have. But again, this is the first season that he's had a really, really good run at it. Um, he's definitely someone to look at after his bye. That's probably going to start looking and go because I feel like the Giants have a decent run home, playing off against West Coast, the Suns twice, and a couple of other teams. And then when it comes time for finals, I think we play. There we go. North Melbourne, then Gold Coast, and then St Kilda in the final three games. So they're teams that he could, yeah, really get off the leash for and go big. So he definitely needs to be one that that coaches are watching. Um, but yes, when do you pick him up? He's certainly going to be a player of difference at the start of the season because I feel like he's a bit maxed out in price. But yeah, the role's there. We want to get the ball in his hands, and he's one of our best users. So from that perspective, he's a really good super coach player.
Yeah, and I think also now kind of losing Isaac Cumming, who, yeah, it's had his injury concerns, but yeah, the fact that he's no longer in that back line, probably just helps with the fact that we know it's pretty well only going to be
Mm-hmm.
Whitfield and Ash as the halfbacks. There's no one
Yeah.
stealing any points off them. It does make him more of a target for a potential tag, and we have seen that in the past. But a lot of the time, they're going to probably more focus on your midfielders, sort of your Kelly, even Green. Even if Callahan gets going, so there are players who will take attention. But we got to be mindful that there are taggers out there that will lock down on Whitfield.
100%. And he's always the one that players are going to go to. We've seen that numerous times throughout the last season where, you get teams like Sydney or St Kilda. If you're going to tag somebody, you tag Lockie Whitfield because he does so much setting up for us in the back half. The only thing I would correct you on is I feel like Isaac Cumming was playing more wing last year, but Harry Perryman's disappeared from our back line as well.
That as well, yes.
So that's where, again, there's going to be that extra supply of points. And whether, Whitfield can increase on what he did last year with the extra available points, or whether a player like Ash gets to step up and take it, and suddenly goes from, being an 80 averaging player to low 90s. It'll be interesting to see because we've lost Perryman, we've lost Cumming. So there are points available for whoever wants to grab them.
Well, Ash is a good one that you've brought up, and I haven't gone the targets, but from a draft perspective, he's a real spokey because nobody's going to be looking at him. So
Mhm.
he's one of those guys. He's priced at sort of 84.8.
Yep.
So you'll probably be getting that range of sort of as you get past the 90 guys and into that sort of 88, 87 bracket. And it'll be interesting to kind of see how long Ash lasts there. But I think there'll
Mhm.
be more, I guess, sexier names for this season that people are going to target before that are further
Yep.
down that list, aka like a Callum Mills, for
Mm.
example, who, because of that classic value. So those guys will be going off the board before somebody like Ash, who, easily can have 5 points, if not more, if, those Perryman points. And, we're talking about
Mm.
even coming, as you said, on the wing, but there's points going out of that team, even Peatling, who plays different roles. So they have lost, senior guys who really the only obvious replacement that's coming in Stringer, who's more of the forward guy. So
Mhm.
you'd think that there's potential for fringe players or rookies or whatever to come in and take those spots, or shore up those spots if there's no injuries. It's a different story. But if they get some, they're going to come in, and normally some of those rookie guys don't obviously score the same points as what a Perryman would have scored, for example. So if Ash is in those roles, and especially if the Giants were to regress a little bit and the ball does spend a little bit more time down the back line, there's more of an opportunity for somebody like him.
Yep. Ironically, we don't need to regress too much. The Giants don't tend to play too much in the forward half, except when we're scoring goals. So we spend a lot of time in our back line and then do a major run and somehow score a goal from that chain. So it does spend a lot of time in the opponent's back 50. The interesting thing about Ash is I've been watching him since he got drafted because I really, really like his game. He, I remember his first year where he was demanding the ball off players, and we've often used him as a setup player. We'll go the small kick to Ash, and then he'll use a little bit of his run to break the lines. Um, Last year, he was a bit inconsistent with his kicking, which was frustrating. He'd break the player open nicely and then go to kick it to a player and kick it over his head, and we'd all go, "Oh, what's happening again?" But I think if the Giants are to take another step forward next year, it's going to be on the likes of a player like Lockie Ashen going, we're going to trust you to, yeah, take hold of the games and actually, break them open for us and give us that extra bit of run out of the defensive 50. Because, with players like Peatling and Cumming gone, um, we need somebody to step up into that void.
And he's 23, turning 24 mid-year, 100 games
Yep.
under the belt now. So this is prime in your career for the halfback flanker. So
Yep.
wouldn't be surprised if it just we could get that sort of career season from him.
Yep.
From a classic point of view, can I see the hard thing with these halfback flanks now? They need to be averaging probably nearly 105 just to be relevant, just
Yep.
because the way the position's played, unfortunately, compared to like previous years, it might have not been the case like 100, but when you've got guys like your Sheasels, Ryans, Whitfield, Sinclairs are going 110 for fun.
Yep.
That's a massive jump for Ash, around that 84 to throw sort of 21 to 26 points on his average. I don't see him doing that, but definitely anywhere between sort of 5 and 10. He could easily get himself up to a mid 95 guy. And then you've got value if you're drafting him.
100%. I think, only touch him in draft. He's not a classic person, especially as he's pointed out with the options that we have down back. But just one to keep an eye on to see how the team structures up around him.
The only, I guess, caveat there is if Whitfield was to go down for a long-term injury, then it might be all stocks in on Ash for your classic team.
I mean, 100%.
So they're definitely one to keep an eye on. I know we're obviously talking about Lockie there, but they kind of go hand in hand.
Yep, the
The
two
two rookies are
Lockies.
there. Yes, Josh Vardy, part of that 4-week suspension for a bit of off-season antics at the we don't need to go into the details there, but just what a rookie again later in the year. Actually, it would actually suit if he came in mid-buy, because we're always looking for downgrade options. But I feel like he's one, he's been there a couple of years on that list now. He's had some really decent VFL form. So I think it's they've got to give him some sort of opportunity. He's played just the 7 games. But yeah, now it's sort of 21 years of age. If he gets back in some good VFL form, there's no reason why he couldn't be part of that Giants team at some point. And then the other one there is James Leake. So a young defender, but again this is all kind of more injury related with the Giants. They'll probably want to get him involved at some point sooner rather than later, because him being a first round pick who is from Tasmania, it's you don't want to kind of throw the whole baby out of the bathwater just to suit these rookies who are from Tassie, as we kind of saw with Beveridge and Sanders last year. But there is a part of it where you've got to kind of get them fitted in and make them feel happy, because they're the ones that in 2-3 years time are going to be getting the big offers to come back home.
Yes, I know all about players traveling back home. Our Supercoach team is probably going to be filled with them. Unfortunately, yeah, as you said, first of all, it's probably going to be injuries are going to be where they get opportunities to come into the team, because the Giants are I feel like we're very hesitant in blooding new rookies immediately. Having said that, Harvey Thomas was an outlier last year where Adam Kingsley got a large chunk of games into. My concern.
And I think the thing with these guys, sorry to butt in, is because they aren't this year's rookies. It's different, I think, with the Giants bringing in rookies in there. They do like to blood them through the VFL program, but because now Leaks had that extra year and Faye's played 2 years in the system, I think they're more likely than somebody you would have said drafted this year, for example.
Yep. No, I agree with that. My concern when it comes to Giants rookies is they'll play a couple of games in a row and then all of a sudden they'll be a sub risk, and you just got to deal with that as part of the Supercoach game, now that we've still got the substitutes for this season as well. It fluctuates that most of the time I don't tend to go anywhere close to the Giants rookies. But yeah, someone like he's got a lot of potential. And I can definitely see us getting games into him this year.
Yep. And then moving to the midfield, the 4 primo guys. So we've got Tom Green, who was started in quite a few people's teams last year, had that very annoying 5 against the Sydney Swans. But outside of that, still managed to average 106.6 for the season. The start, for example, was awesome. He had the 132, 152, 137, and 109. Did drop off a little bit there, but still managed to put up another couple of scores in the 150s. Josh Kelly, who has sort of toyed with our emotions, because we know what this guy can do. He has scored some massive scores in the past, but I think the body at times lets it down. He's more that, I think, if people have been burnt with him in drafts before, you can again pick him up cheaper because they're worried about how many games you can, especially if you're in a draft where you're only in like a 12 team or 10 team draft and you're playing 9 rounds or 11 rounds. You might have to look at Josh Kelly through your season. So it takes away that injury risk compared to playing classic or a large draft where you're playing the full 24 rounds. So that is something to consider there. Finn Callahan, who contract year off the top of my head, it's
I believe so. I'd have to do a double check on that, but I think you're right.
Yeah, I do have it here in my thing. But he is obviously a lot of talent. We're starting to see what he can provide for the Giants. He's part of that next wave with Tom Green in there. So I would not be surprised if he continues to spend even more time around those CBAs, or at least once the ball's sort of been bounced, he's involved in that second or third repeat stoppage. he gets more involved there. And as I've said with other people, and he is a non-free agent out of contract player, contract years always seem to bring out the best in players. So, yeah, 441's an annoying price, but people are looking at that for Ashcroft, Clayton Oliver, Darcy Parish at 480. Yes, Callahan doesn't have the runs on the board as a Clary or a Parish. Will Ashcroft definitely doesn't have the runs on the board outside of the grand final. We're fantastic, Norm Smith, and we know that kid's got a lot of talent. But so does Finn Callahan. He went top 2 in the draft that year with that part of that trade with for Collingwood with 17th because they were trying to move the pick to get Dacos in. So it's not like he's not a talented youngster. He was one of the best kids in the country. He has definitely shown signs that he can continue to improve on that. So he's one that nobody is talking about. And as I said, contract year, and he's through that little sweet spot, 50 games. I always prefer as they're getting close to 100 games, but there's definitely room to move there. And Canelio, like his best can be as good as anyone. But yeah, again, it's the injury concern. I don't think he's going to show what he's done in the past. But if he is again playing around that guts, more for that again, the draft smoky, a lot like the Giants players. He was awesome for us a couple of years ago when he had forward status. So he is still a guy who's take out last year. Previous that he had 2 years of averaging over 100, can still get up to those sort of marks. So wanted to try to have a look out there, and somebody who again, if him or Kelly got an early injury in a game and their price dropped, we're talking about those sort of players on the run home who could be really damaging. They do need to be in the back of their minds, because if you can sort of get what's round 16, so that only leaves them 8 rounds to play. They're kind of that perfect 8-round player because we now have the flex situation. So it doesn't matter if they kind of have a bad week. If you're going to have 23 premiums and Kelly and Canelio, for example, were part of that flex position, they have a bad week while your other players are covering it. If they come out and do what they've done in the past and score one of those massive, they've both double ton before. Anything's possible when they're playing some of the weaker sides. So yeah, there's the four important midfielders who are going to lead that Giants charge, and they all need to be considered in different ways. Mate, do you want to talk through them?
I think you've just summed up the Giants team. We are inconsistently elite.
Yes.
It's yes. And I don't know about you, Swizz, but I kind of see a premium as sort of a player that's averaging. I'm a bit harsh. I like my players to be hitting 120 roughly. They're the Uber premiums, the Bontempellis, the Lockie Neals, even the Paddy Cripps, where, if they score a 1, you're okay with that. If they're dropping around the 100, you're going, I'm paying full price for these players. I was hoping for a little bit more. And then you get the likes of someone like Tom Green, who, as you said, is, getting 150s and also 70s at the same time. And you're like, well, that's 110 average from 2 games, but it just does not feel like that when you own them.
Yes.
And so I have been on the Tom Green roller coaster for a couple of years now because, again, the kid is a gun. I know the Phantom really likes him, and I go, he is going to have a year where he breaks into the Uber premium and goes an average of 120. The problem is that at this stage, whilst his ceiling is so high, his floor is also so low at the same time. And so, yes, he would have burnt a lot of players, as you pointed out, last year when he played Sydney and then got injured in the first quarter, first couple of minutes, scored 5 points. And so, yes, he'll be on a lot of players' never again list. The question is can he take it to another level? Because he does things that are elite. At the same time, he's also a player who'll do a blind handball over the back of his head and it'll go straight to the opposition player and you go, what was that for? But you got to take the good with the bad. He's someone that I'm looking at very, very seriously. he tempts me every single year. The question is for me with the early buy in round 2, I kind of don't want to pick him up for the opening couple of rounds. And so then you're looking at maybe rounds 3 against Hawthorn and then 4 against West Coast would be great to own him against. But the problem is who are you trading out for him if you're going to get somebody that's priced at 574? He's not a mid pricer, so I guess it gives us a little bit of freedom to maybe take a gamble on a few more mid prices, like say Clayton Oliver, and go, I'll start with you at the beginning of the season, and if you're not performing by round 2, after round 2, you're on the chopping block, and I'll get someone like Tom Green in. I think that's sort of the way that we have to play it. Because yes, he is a great player, but he's just, yeah, out of all of our players, he's the most roller coaster to be on. When you've picked him, you just never know what you're going to expect from him. But as he gets another year in the system, I think he can take his game to another level.
Yep.
Josh Kelly.
I agree.
Sorry, go for
I
it.
agree with that, mate. Yep. No, it's good.
Yeah, Josh Kelly, he's always been the Rolls Royce of our midfield. Again, as you pointed out, injuries. So I think, as you pointed out, maybe having a look after his bye round and going, okay, we've got a decent run home. What can you do? Whereabouts are you priced? He's someone that will definitely be very, very unique. Finn Callahan, I really like his game. My problem is that I don't yet see the role opening up for him. Because as you pointed out, he will be eventually kind of number 2 to Tom Green in our midfield, and we'll just, have our ruckman tap into those 2 players. Whereas he's one of those players that I don't tend to notice, and then all of a sudden he pops up and you go, oh yeah, he's playing this game, and he's just, been accumulating his touches here and there, but he's never one that kind of draws your eye to him. I love him as a player, but as you pointed out, there are a couple of other players around the 400 mark that go, I think they're probably safer, but definitely one to watch. If the likes of Ward gets rested, he could kind of take over that role more this year.
Yeah, he's the one. If I feel like if there's the Giants injury early, and Clary or Parrish or someone like that does not work out. Like Parrish has got the bye. I think it's the round 4 bye in the season. So you at least still a couple of games to look at to kind of see what's happening there. So if you are taking a kind of risk on one of those mid prices and it hasn't worked out for them for the first couple of weeks, the Giants kind of get an injury. And I wouldn't expect Callahan's price to even move even after he sort of kind of bye there anyway. But if something did happen with that Giants midfield, you actually got to see the move of him playing in there, and one of these other mid prices weren't working out, and you wanted a kind of an alternative, or especially because Will Ashcroft has the round 3 game anyway, or you might already have Will Ashcroft. It's one just I think we got to watch because, as I've said, the kid is very talented. And they want to keep him, and career year 2, it's that first big contract for him. And he's gonna want to break out, and he's sort of been from his first year to his second year, he had the 18-point growth. Then last year he's had the 9-point growth, take him to around that 82 price. He could go 95. It's not enough, which is annoying, but it's not out of the realms for somebody like him with the right role to go low hundreds. And then you're kind of thinking, well, is that somebody I can at least massage to the middle buy and then kind of have a relook and at least he puts 100K on his price, and it might be at least a stepping stone. And depending on then what happens with that Giants midfield, the improvement can continue to come, because by the time the mid-year rolls over, he's got 60 odd games under him. And as I said, if he hasn't re-signed, well, there could still be big scores on the way.
100%. He tends to play the wing role for us, and so I'd like to see him move up into the centre bounce attendances. because that's where his scoring would increase. But my problem is that we've got a couple of players like, say, the Brent Daniels or the Jake Stringer that we brought in, who I see getting more midfield time than the likes of someone like Finn Callaghan. So he's going to keep roaming that wing up and down, and then if the ball's on the other side, he's going to go missing for patches of the game. So yeah, I love him as a player. As a super coach pick, I'm hesitant, but yeah, if the role's there, he's a gun, and he'll be able to actually convert it into super coach points really, really easily because his ball use is very, very good.
Yeah, and for sure. And I see him as kind of that McCluggage and the way that he kind of plays there, starts wing, but you just kind of want him to move into the guts at some point. And as I said, that's all injury related. And the Giants always seem to have a lot. So, yeah, you hope for their sake and your sake it doesn't happen. But if it was, yeah, that's just one that, we continue to see what happens.
Yeah. And then Stephen Cornelio, as you said, one of the few players who can go 200 points in Supercoach. At the same time, like Tom Green, ceiling is super high and his floor can be quite low too. I love, he is our general in the midfielder. He's that bull that we need to kind of get the young ones focused, and we're going to hit this stoppage. My problem is, again, his ball usage isn't great. A little bit like the Tom Green, he can do the brilliance, and he can also blunder a kick, and it's like they're costly in Supercoach. Definitely one to keep an eye out for draft. Again, he'll be quiet, and he could. Again, how do the players jump back from having a final series where they've lost 2 games? He's the kind of player that could take it upon himself and go, I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to take it to the next level and go, I'm going to take the responsibility on myself. And so we know in Supercoach, they reward players who do those drastic things in the dying seconds, and he's the kind of player who would step up and put his hand up and go, the game needs to be won, I'm going to do it. So I love him as a player. Still just hesitant to pick him in Classic. In draft, I think he's a good option.
Yeah, no, that's fair. The one thing that does annoy me, but you understand why they do it, is in regards to those sort of centre bounce attendances. Come second half of the year, Toby Bedford did take up a fair chunk because he is always following someone. So it's always
100%.
annoying if you own an opponent of the Giants because he's going lockdown, but it does affect, obviously one of the players getting squeezed out. What is interesting is the amount of CBAs that James Peatling did have on the run home. So he was tracking in between that sort of 60 and 80% in most games outside of 23 and 24 from round 19 onwards. So he did spend a lot of time, and that was probably with Josh Kelly being out of the side. And even when Kelly came back, there was only one game where he did have over 60%. So Peatling was taking a large chunk. So with him sort of squeezing out, and in those games, Peatling was taking chunks outside of the Bulldogs game, which was Finn Callaghan's most. There was, and that was because Bedford wasn't playing that day. Callaghan was moving back on that wing, so there was definitely games where Peatling wasn't playing, where Callaghan had some of his high percentages of, even as high as 84 and 89% CBA. So with Peatling gone, it'll be interesting to see what they kind of do there. If those percentages to Callaghan continue, because we know Tom Green's locked and loaded. There was only 7 games, I think, maybe 8 games where he didn't go over 80% CBAs, and those ones are more 78, 79. So he was so close to pretty well, and that would just be because he'll be stuck on the bench when they were happening. So, and I guess Kelly, maybe there's a continued regression. Cornelio, when he plays, always seems to take up a chunk, and then there's Bedford. But it was interesting when Cornelia was out as well, that Callahan also did lift in his CBA. So, it only now with Peatling gone, and then it just takes one of Cornelia and Kelly not being there, and they definitely do lift, lift for Callahan. And then no surprise there that when Callahan's around the ball, he's got the ability to score even if he isn't playing in the guts. But I think like round 16 is an example. It dropped way back down to 36% CBAs, and he only scores a 71. Against Hawthorn, it was back down to 22% and only scored a 54. Where obviously some of his better scores were coming when he was getting that CBA score time. There was a few games in there where he still managed to get quite well playing. But against there was Hawthorn early in the year, 70%, went 101. So the D's, where were you there, Melbourne? Still around that 50% mark, and he's gone 122. So if he's getting centre bounce attendances, those scores do peak up quite a lot. So just something, again, I'm not trying to sell the farm here on Finn Callahan, but it's probably the one because of the prices of all these Giants players. Unless we think Tom Green can it's just hard to say outside of natural development where Tom Green gets his boost. Probably natural development says he can probably put 5 points on, but there's nothing screaming at me that's going to change that. It's going to outside maybe somehow cleaning up a little bit of his kicking or getting involved more on the scoreboard. Where Callahan, I can see there's an obvious symmetry with how much time he plays in the guts and how he scores.
Yeah, it's nice that you have such a distinct statistic to look for throughout the year. You're going, okay, where's his centre bounce attendances? That's the score that you can expect from him. Because, yes, I had forgotten that he did get a bit of midfield time, especially towards the end. The Peatling one is interesting because the question goes, who gets the midfield minutes from him? Because I was disappointed to see him go. He saved the game for us on like 4 occasions last year, taking the mark against St Kilda, a tackle against Geelong, another tackle against Melbourne. I can't remember the other one, but he was a really good player who brought a lot of energy. My interest is in the fact that we've brought in Jake Stringer. And again, this is going to be body dependent and fitness dependent, but I feel like we brought him in with the intention of going, we don't have the player that's like a Jordan De Goey or a Dustin Martin back in his heyday. That's kind of the role that we want Jake Stringer to play, where we need someone to turn it on its head. Jake, go into the midfield and do your stuff. And so I see him being called on a lot. And he's going to be very interesting in our forward line too, because it's going to be very interesting to see how teams match up, especially if he's almost playing like 4 feet tall in our forward line. But definitely 100% keep a watch on Finn Callahan. See if there's for some reason he's getting a lot of centre bounce attendances. That's our go sign. That's our bring him into your team if he's got the role that's there.
The most questions I've been having about the GWS so far, and I'm going to put this with a huge exclamation mark, do not pick Jake Stringer. I do not know why people are asking me about him. He's going to, the good thing is, as we've talked about, he comes in that forward line. So the Giants have lost, as we said, Perryman off that halfback, coming around that wing and defensive wing half, can slot back to halfback. Peatling, who second half was getting CBAs. And they've replaced them with a forward. So it's not like some of these guys are going to have to go resting forward. They've actually now got to fill in gaps. And maybe just because of Kelly and his age and his body, it's not out of the question that a Josh Kelly could go play wing as well if they want to try to protect him more, just because how much longer can this guy hold up with the way he sort of played out his career? He's turning 30 by the start of the season, and it's not completely old, but it's just, they might be trying to how can we expand him? And we did see that with his minutes and CBAs when he returned from injury last year. So that wouldn't surprise me at all if come that preseason game against Carlton, Josh Kelly wing, Finn Callahan guts, because they're not going to tag in preseason. A lot of teams don't tag until sort of get a few rounds in anyway. So that's probably the thing I'm looking for there. And the other probably the only interesting player, I don't think it's the year of Harry Himmelberg. We've seen that one before, but it's got to be Kieran Briggs. It's got to be looked at from a draft point of view. I've been saying it. Let other people go, and unless you can get Tristan Cherry, let everybody else go draft Darcy, DeConning, the ones that are going to be the hype players, and just wait until outside round 10 to pick up either your Kieran Briggs, your Darcy Camerons. These guys, they all score an average around the same. We saw Briggs, in that sort of breakout year, what he can do. As I said, I don't need to go into some of the apparent reasons why his form was poor in the start of last year, but it did average that 109 for us on the run home in 2023. 2024 did not get going until about the bye. Did have a poor game against the Swans, but on that run home, there was still some big games. The 148 against the Blues did put up a couple, a 122, a 111, and 113 among some other hundreds. So the scoring capacity is there. He's a big boy that can play with this new ruck rule. And if he's kind of gets it going, unlike that sort of that little middle patch that he had, he's definitely value at the 95-point price that he's at.
Yeah, one thing I like about Kieran Briggs was last year he kicked 3 goals, 12 behinds. And so, he's got extra points that he can gain if he can work on his kicking. But if he's able to work on his kicking and he actually starts converting those goals, it's going to put extra pressure on the ruckman to hold him accountable, in which case he might start tiring them out because they suddenly have to run to keep up with him because he's finding the space in our forward line, in which case he may be able to grab extra points from the actual ruck contests against them. So definitely got a bit of upside there. Just towards the end of the year, it was also a case of were his shoulders going to still be good enough because he was carrying a lot of injuries during that time. We'd keep watching the game.
That as well.
He would go off and we'd go, is he going to come back on or not? And then he'd come back out and we'd go, phew. But you could just tell that he was struggling with his shoulders at the end.
Yeah, and so he's a big preseason watch for a guy who's 25, so he's starting to hit that sweet spot for a ruck. A lot of people are looking at DeConning, a lot of questions there. A lot of people looking at Shrek, massive questions there. As much as I love Shrek, but he's a guy who, in his sort of limited time as we've seen as a sole ruck, especially in that 2023 season, has the ability to put up massive scores and he's fairly consistent as well too. Like he like everyone puts the odd sticker in, but he wasn't dropping under too much. And as we said, there was some injury and personal concerns in that start of the year. Why come round 11 he was only sort of averaging 86 and still managed to get that up to 95 by the end of the season. So that's a big uptick. And if he hits the ground running, especially if Shrek or DeConning, they don't work out, at least you've kind of got a backup guy who's around that same price where you can go, well, actually this guy's got good ruck matchups coming up. And we know he's pretty solid. So one to again watch his fitness through the preseason, but at least we know he's pretty well there sole ruck.
Yep, and that's exactly right. He is our sole ruck. We don't have anyone that's going to be competing for slot number 2 like you've got Sean Darcy has Luke Jackson and things like that. It's just he is going to be our number 1 ruck the entire season if his body holds up to it.
Yep, exactly. Before we wind it up, anything else you would like to add here, mate?
I'm going to throw one more player into the mix, and it's a very left field and only for draft. But Toby Green had a quiet year last year. And he has been going on a cycle of under 90, over 90, under 90, over 90, under 90. So my prediction is that he'll come back and he'll get a 90 average again, which again, from a classic perspective, probably isn't enough upside in him. But as a draft watch, I think he could get back to his best. So he'll be very low on the list. So just keep an eye out for him when it comes time to draft.
No, I like that. We know he's such a great leader for them. So what he can do, and he can turn a game in a quarter. So yeah, if he's driving this team, if he's hurting from the last couple of years, and wants to try to lead them back to where they need to be, he can definitely do that for sure.
Yes, we were definitely missing his brilliance in the back half of the season. He still managed to go over 150 during one of those games, which surprised me. But yes, he had his first child, so I reckon there were a couple of sleepless nights, so he wasn't 100% at his best. But I think, again, he's going to be one of the players who'll come back after those two finals losses and go, time's running out. I'm going to put the team back on my shoulders and do everything I can to drag us to the finals. So I think you'll see a big uptick in his scoring again.
Yeah, no, I do like that. Just one back onto Briggs while I was just looking through a couple extra stats there. And it's always hard when you cherry pick stats, but take out that round 15 game on the run home after his bye against the Swans, where he only scored a 47 that day, but he did average 110 on the run home without that game. So that's obviously way under sort of what he's coming in on this season. So just thought I'd better throw that one back in for a guy again who's priced in the 95s.
Yep, 100%. Again, he's going to be interesting with the early buy, but I don't even mind him being looked at in Classic, especially if you're going with the 3-ruck combo with the flex position and trying to get the players who are going to score massive on particular matchups. He's the kind of guy that easy matchup, he will bully the ruckman around and score big.
Yeah, no, I do like that. Well, mate, I think that's it for us for the GWS podcast. Grady, thank you so much for joining us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Swizz.
No problem. Continue to check out our upcoming team and Supercoach discussions, like, subscribe, all those good things, and we'll talk soon. Bye, guys.